Welcome to Blind Spots, a podcast where we're helping you fill the gap between what you want to do with your money and what you actually do. We are professional investors, writers, and financial planners helping you navigate the complexities of finance to optimize what you can control and cut out the rest. Join your host, Nik Shermans and Aaron Varghese, as we discuss the questions and nuances surrounding everyday money management.
Greetings, everyone. We are back with another edition of Blind Spots, special edition, happy half hour with Toby Weber and Nik Shermans, where we talk markets, economy, life, try to keep it light and entertaining. So, Toby, what's happening with you?
Not a lot happening this morning. Getting ready for the holidays upcoming and looking forward to that, and looking forward to a little bit of time off and the end of the year for the markets. So excited for all of that.
Cool. So those of you first time checking in, Toby has questions for me. I have a few questions for him. I don't know what he's going to ask me. He doesn't know what I'm going to ask him. So there's a bit of ad-libbing going on. So this isn't scripted. This isn't regimented or prepared for. This is kind of off the cuff, which is how we like it.
Okay, I will jump in with that. So each podcast, we tend to talk about an asset class and kind of get your perspective on it. Not that you're going to recommend or not recommend something, but just kind of give your perspective on how you think about that asset class. So today, the asset class that I'd like you to weigh in on is dividend stocks. So how do you think about dividend stocks? How do you position dividend stocks? How do they fit into an overall portfolio?
I feel like this is entrapment again. Okay, so I have two stories on dividend stocks. One is during a zero rate environment, which was from 2009 to 2021. When rates were at zero, I think dividend investing made more sense. However, I saw a lot of people make reckless allocation decisions, buying a dog-esque company because they were blinded by the yield, and they were getting blinded by 7, 8, 9% yield, which is usually a sign something is fundamentally wrong with the company. And what ended up happening was they'd get blinded by the dividend yield, 7, 8%. The underlying stock was down 40% for a net total return of negative 30+%. It was akin to picking up nickels in front of a steamroller. So fast forward to now, rates are much higher. I can park money in a 1-year treasury and get 5+%. Dividend investing suddenly makes less sense. It becomes less attractive. And I think when you reconcile performance between non-dividend paying stocks this year and dividend paying stocks, it's a gap that's very wide, where dividend stocks are out of favor because it makes less sense to target a 3 to 5% dividend when you can get that in a risk-free asset. The other mistake I see people making with dividend investing is owning them in taxable accounts. So dividends are hardly the worst sin, but when you own them in a taxable account, there's no way for us to shelter dividend income from taxes. Okay, so that's how I think about it. But again, if someone wants to own dividend paying stocks, I think the sweet spot for yield, this is based on empirical evidence, is anywhere from 3 to 5%. Anything above that 5% threshold would cause me to pause and think there's something wrong with the underlying company.
And do rates, as you alluded to, rates seem to have an impact, meaning if rates are higher, especially risk-free rates, then dividend stocks may be less attractive. And conversely, if rates go back to 2% or something and dividend stocks are paying 3 to 5, as you indicate, maybe there's a better opportunity at that point. Is that a fair comment?
That's a fair summary. And it goes back to one of my core beliefs, is that allocation decisions are not made in a vacuum, right? We're comparing the relative attractiveness of one asset class versus another. And those obviously change over time.
Okay, great. Next subject, we also have a recurring discussion about different types of investors, and you tend to share some thoughts or ideas or suggestions on what those particular investors are thinking about or should be thinking about. So today, the category we're going to talk about is early retirees. So people in their 60s, mid 60s perhaps, that have just hung it up after a long and hopefully successful career. What are the things that those people should be thinking about in the first 2, 3, 5 years of retirement?
So the first thing I would say is the day that you retire is the day your assets need to last the longest period of time, right? So that means what you use, the skills, the mindset you use to build wealth might not be appropriate for preserving wealth. And I think there's a subtle but very important downshift that needs to take place. Because if you think about the average person and their working career and their mindset, they're very much in wealth building mode. So they're taking on debt, they're seeking risk, they're making bets. And the range of outcomes for those bets might be wider, and they can stomach that risk because they have time on their side. They're earning, they're working, maybe their spouse works. Okay. Once someone retires, at some point you need to put your flag in the ground and say, I've got enough, right? The skill set, in my opinion, for building and keeping wealth are completely different. Now, as you downshift and you found you're enough, you don't need to take risk. You need to be more patient and measured and prudent. And I think people have a tough time turning off that wealth building mindset, the relentless pursuit of more. And looking back at history, there's countless examples of people that had more than enough, but couldn't downshift, couldn't turn that risk-seeking mindset off, and it led to an increased risk of ruin or outright ruin. So that's what we try to help people understand is the skill set for building wealth and keeping wealth are much different. And it's really hard to turn that risk-seeking mindset off because it's dominated most of your life, right? 30, 40, 50 years of work.
Yeah, and I think what we share with folks when we do planning, people that are heading into retirement, is helping them understand that there's really only two primary factors in retirement that are going to impact your future wherewithal, your ability to have your money last till you need it to last. One is spending, and the other is investment performance. Those are the biggest drivers that are going to determine if you have enough money to do what you want to do. One of those they can't control. Now, we can make changes to the portfolio and make it a little bit more resilient in a down market, and we certainly would take those steps. But the spending is really the only area that they can control. And obviously, we've seen examples of where people get into retirement and are spending too much, and that has to be reined in, or they run the risk of running out of money. And other people, surprisingly, go the other way. They don't spend enough. And we have to almost encourage them to spend the money that they've worked so hard to build up over 20, 30, 40 years because they're worried about running out of money, which is valid. But at the end of the day, they should enjoy that money, enjoy their retirement with family or travel or whatever they want to do.
Yeah. And I think sometimes on the hoarder side, on the frugal side, I think we forget that money is a tool to produce experiences or to have experiences. And if you die with a pile of money, you basically shorted yourself on the experiences that you could have had. So it's a fine balance. And I'm starting to read books about how money's less at some threshold for all of us. Money becomes less important. Experiences, family, friends become more important. And it's a delicate balance for everybody. But I think sometimes we lose sight that money is just a tool to do the things that we want to do, experiences, things in that vein. So good stuff.
Okay, your turn.
Okay, so my questions are a little bit, I ask a lot of weird questions, and this is consistent with that profile. So let's start with maybe a not so weird question. What do you say when a client is baiting you or wanting to talk politics?
Yeah, what I say is one, the data shows, the research shows that politics doesn't tend to have an impact on investment performance, even though many folks are certain that it does. If so-and-so gets elected, the market will undoubtedly go up. If so-and-so doesn't get elected, bad things will happen. And the research just shows that isn't true. So therefore, I try to kind of, artfully dismiss that as a factor in investments and managing wealth, because I just think it's a lot of noise. And as you know, politics is a very emotional issue for a lot of people. And while I follow it because I think you want to be up to speed on what's going on in the world, I can't let it seep into what we do from an investment standpoint, because history shows it really has no bearing on that. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's kind of sad that we live in a time where if someone says a politically charged comment, you basically can predict how they feel about other things, and you basically can predict how they're invested, or their lifestyle habits, or their friends, or the things that they do. Right? I read an interesting quote where a true independent thinker, if they let their opinion known on a certain topic, you can't tell how they feel about other topics. And I feel like American tribalism, social media, the mob mentality, like we're all drinking the fire hose of beliefs. And if you believe one thing or you identify with one group, that means you believe everything that they believe. And that's just a sign that we can't think independently anymore. So to answer your question, I don't touch the politic thing. I think
Sure.
the entire system's a flaming dumpster fire. I would like to see people think independently, because when you look back at history, problems arise when people get sucked into these tribes.
Mhm.
And I don't want to go down rabbit holes and use examples, but it's problems happen when societies cannot think independently. I guess I'll leave it there. Next question.
Okay.
If you had to own one stock for 10 years personally and you couldn't sell it, what would it be? And this is not us recommending a stock. This is just an intellectual exercise that I like to ask myself every now and again. So now I'm asking Toby.
Good question. I don't buy a ton of individual stocks. So, ironically, or perhaps I'd probably end up buying one of the large technology companies. And the reason for that is because of the cash generation. Now, those stocks, by almost any measure, are quite expensive today relative to where they have been historically. So I'm not sure today would be the day to buy that stock. But if I had to, I think the moat that some of those companies have and the cash that they generate allows them to invest in new technologies. Microsoft's pushing heavy into AI. So it would probably be a company like that I thought, one, was going to be around, two, has an ability to maintain and grow their earnings, three, is going to generate a lot of cash that they can invest in new technologies, new opportunities, new businesses, and take my chances with that individual stock. You want to take a shot at the same question? And again, not recommending to buy a certain stock today, but more for discussion.
In general, if I buy an individual stock, I usually never sell it. Even if it's going through a tough patch, like I just buy stuff and I want to own it for at least 5 years, and that 5 years ends up becoming 10 years. I just want to see how it plays out. Like there's a reason why I bought it. As long as my process was sound, I usually never sell it. And know that I own, like many of our clients own, our lobbyist index. I too own that, but I don't trade it. I don't really even look at it.
Good. Nope, that's good stuff. Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Less shop talk and more other life activities. First question for you. What is a holiday event that doesn't involve your family that you're looking forward to over the next few weeks and into the new year? Is there something that you do that, obviously family events and Christmas with the family is the highlight? What's something else that you're looking forward to doing over the next few weeks?
That doesn't include my family.
Correct.
Wow, that's a loaded question. I try. So this is a busy time of year for the Shermans. My oldest daughter has a birthday on Thanksgiving. We host Thanksgiving. My middle daughter's birthdays during the first week of December. Both of our daughters are in basketball. That starts and ramps up. Christmas, of course. So I actually try to unplug like the last 10 days of the year, but it never happens. So I'm really going to try to unplug, play some golf if the weather allows, watch some college football bowl games. This is the last year I'm going to be paying attention, and just read and unplug, not look at my phone, not respond to email, and just really focus on working out and being mindful and reading. Like, so that's boring kind of old man stuff, but that's really what I'm looking forward to, just slowing down and taking some time for myself.
That's great.
Okay, I'll ask you the same question.
It's an opportunity. I have groups of friends from different backgrounds meaning that I met them in high school or I met them in college, or we have a tennis group that we play with, and getting together with those folks in a relaxed setting and kind of catching up with them, because those are, quite frankly, the relationships that you give short shrift to during the year because you're so involved with work and family and other activities. So I always try to make a point to connect with those folks over the holidays, because those people are important in my life and I want them to know that. So,
Okay. What's your favorite holiday cheat meal or dessert?
I like Thanksgiving, and maybe it's the entire day, but I like the food that gets served at Thanksgiving. Maybe it's because you only have it once a year typically, but that's probably my favorite holiday and favorite food that we get at a holiday. How about you?
I'm a big dessert guy. I mean, I don't usually eat desserts, but during the holidays, I kind of let it go. And my mom makes a good chocolate pie, apple pie with ice cream. That's always good. My kids they've got a sweet tooth. I don't know what's going on with them, but they're always busting out snacks and asking my mom, their grandma, to make a certain dessert, and I end up eating it. So I kind of just throw my diet out the window and shovel desserts down my face, and I don't really feel bad about it.
It's great. Hence the working out and the golf and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, I got another question for you. You
Okay.
got to pick door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3, because I have 3 different questions for you.
Let's go. Let's split the middle. Let's do 2.
All right, door number 2. You do an annual trip to Bandon Dunes every year with friends and fellow golfers. What is it about Bandon Dunes? What is it about that trip that gets you excited, that makes you look forward to that all year long? And what do you get from that experience every year?
I mean, I have to start with the golf. So I don't know if non-golfers know this, but 5 of the top 25 public courses are on the Southwest Oregon coast. It's about a 4-hour drive. So some of the best golf on planet Earth is right in our backyard. People fly to Bandon Dunes from all over the world. It's a magical place. It's right on the Southwest Oregon coast, which is very rugged. There's gorse. There's no people on the beach. It's basically untouched coastline. And the best thing about Bandon is just the experience. I mean, it's old school golf. There's no golf carts. You're walking. You can get a caddy. It's natural golf the way it was meant to be played, meaning it's not manicured the best. It might not pass the eye test, right? So there could be rough that's grown out or discolored grass, bushes all around the green that are unkept. But it's a very beautiful patch of land. And then the brotherhood, the camaraderie. So a lot of my peers that go, we're all in our, call it late 30s, 40s, early 50s. We all have families. We all work. And it's just a really great opportunity to connect, to not be doing work email or on your phone, and just breathe and really enjoy each other's company and having meaningful conversations and checking in with people. It's my favorite trip of the year, and we've done it for 4 years. And as long as I'm above ground, I'm going to do it until I can't walk anymore.
Yeah, we've been down there a number of times as well. And yeah, I think it's the remoteness. And when you get there, you feel like you might as well be on the moon, because everything slows down. You can really focus on the golf if you want, the people if you want, all of the experience, the beauty if you want. And then before you hang it up and come back to the rigmarole that is daily life. So it's a real escape when we are able to get down there and do it.
100%. Let's go door number 1.
Door number 1, and this can be a little bit of a teaser for the upcoming blog post. But what's one book that you've read this year that really affected you, or that really made you stop and think? What was the lesson you gleaned from that book? And then maybe you can talk about the blog post we have coming out in a week or so.
Yeah, so I'll start with the last part. So every year, I think this is our 5th year doing it, we share a reading list with our clients and readers. So I've asked the team to highlight 5 books that you've read over the past year So your top 5 books, and clients have given us feedback. They really like it. Everyone's looking for something great to read around the holidays. So it's a nice insight into some of the stuff our team is reading. So Morgan Housel is a blogger, entrepreneur that I've followed for a long time. He's a finance, psychology of money, behavioral finance writer. And he published his 2nd book this year, Same as Ever. And it talks about how each crisis is different, right? You think COVID, you think the great financial crisis, the tech bubble, right? Every economic cycle has its own quirks. However, the human response to those events is very much predictable. And I'm really infatuated with behavioral finance, investor psychology, because sometimes I forget or sometimes I think people forget in the digital age where there's AI and all these advanced tech things, that markets are really humans trading with other humans. And you can't ignore the human component, but it's not talked about enough. So by identifying our blind spots, patterns in human behavior, I think we all can become better investors. And I'm almost done with the book, but it has some really good ideas that are packaged up in easy to read stories, and it's relatable, it's understandable, it's simple. And Morgan Housel is like, if I could become 1/100th of the writer that guy is, I would consider that a huge win. He's a brilliant mind and a great writer. I would encourage everyone to check him out.
Yeah, what I like about his writing is he doesn't dumb it down, but he explains it in a way that everybody can understand the points that he's making. So very clear, concise, uses examples, and so it makes it very easy to read and pick up, the messages that he's trying to send. So,
what's the most impactful book that you've read this year?
I'm going to punt on that question. Otherwise, I'm going to talk, and then you're going to talk, and then we'll be over 30 minutes.
Do you only read like finance books, investing type books?
I would say I read probably at least half of the books are finance related, a subject about finance that I want to learn more about, or a subject that I find interesting, or a new take on it. And then the other half are just things that I find interesting and catch my interest. But most of it is, I find myself gravitating more towards nonfiction. I used to in my younger days read spy novels and this and that and the other, and it just doesn't do it for me. So I tend to focus on things where I can really kind of learn something, hopefully. So
gotcha. All right, let's hit him with the last question, and then we'll wrap this up.
So why don't you take the last question? The last question I have for you, we can punt on.
Are you a New Year's resolution type guy? Like, do you pledge to stick to something for the new year?
Oh yeah, huge. Much to the chagrin of my wife, my family, my friends. I don't know. I like to, when you get to a new year, I like to use the time to look at where I'm at and try to focus on some things that I want to do better in the new year. That can be, hey, I want to be better husband, better father, work out, be a better colleague, whatever it is. And then I like to be intentional about what are 2 or 3 things. I don't have a laundry list, but what are 2 or 3 things that I'd like to focus on. And then I want to use the new year as an opportunity to do that. And with varying degrees of success, some things work and some things make the list the following year. But I do use New Year's as a time to reflect and a time to think about what is important to me in the upcoming year. And I've got to be intentional about focusing on those things if I want to give them a chance to happen. How about you? Are you do you dismiss that whole nonsense, or do you get into that?
I'm not a fan of the once a year transformations, right? I'm more like, humans all have the same goals. Like, a lot of people come the turn of the calendar into the new year will say, hey, I'm really going to get in the gym. Gym's full in January, full in February, kind of thins out in March, and then in April, no one's at the gym, right? Well, at least not the people that are starting to work out and trying to get motivated, because they're relying on these shots in the arm, these moments of inspiration, where they should be thinking about their daily habits and their processes and systems, because winners and losers have the same goals, but they have very different systems. So I'm a habits guy. I'm a process guy. I don't want to have a a transformation just because the calendar turns. I want to be doing the right thing week in and week out, day in and day out. So, it's easier said than done. I think the mark of a professional is doing things when you don't feel like doing them and being comfortable with being bored and the mundane. So that's what I try to focus on. Again, I might fail sometimes, but I think that's a better way to do it than trying to get motivated, once a year. But hey, to each their own, find what works for you. And I think as long as we're all trying to get better, however that looks, that's great.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. This is Happy Half Hour with Toby and Nik. Would love your feedback. If there's any topics that you want us to cover next time, I think we try to do this once or twice a month. We can do it more. We could do it less. Wishing all of you a happy holiday. Cheers.
Cheers.